Who is the best coach in the Big East? The nominees aren't hard to figure out, but the answer, that's actually pretty tricky. Dan Hurley has won two of the last three national titles at UConn, but Rick Pitino has two natties of his own, plus has taken three different schools to the Final Four and might be poised to take that total to four this year. We break down who tops the list, plus we draft the other Big East coaches Ryder Cup style to figure out how the rest of the league's coaching tiers break down. It's all next on Big East Energy Weekly. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big East Energy Weekly, brought to you by Asabasa Spice. I'm Matt Janus from the Holy Nova podcast, alongside Bryan Webster of Pirate Vibes. And Bryan, it is Ryder Cup week. So, you know, the golf nerd in me, if you can see the Ryder Cup shirt that I'm wearing right now, we had to figure out a way to incorporate that somehow while answering the question the two of us have been spending most of the offseason debating who the best coach in the Big East is. So we decided to create our own game. We're going to break down the Big East coaches, Ryder Cup style. We're going to name two captains. We're going to pick out the teams. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. And I'm excited to go with you because I think that's what started our friendship, really, in our little private chats and everything, that you were one side and I was the other, and it was clear cut, and like we were ready to go right then and there. So out of that little conversation, this was born. And now that we're part of Big East Energy Weekly, where we're doing a show, we'll be able to debate every week.
Well, it's pretty funny because you were incredulous that I thought there could possibly be any other answer, but that's the fun of this format as we're going to break it down. We should start with this, though. Are you a golf fan? Will you be watching the Ryder Cup?
I was a golf fan more with Tiger's crazy days. Obviously, I know the guys now, Scheffler, and I know them, but I won't be glued to my TV. I'm more looking forward to college football, even though my team is not that great. So whatever.
Well, that's the beauty of college football. There's plenty of other options that you could choose from, but I recommend checking out the Ryder Cup. It is fascinating television, the drama, the international intrigue, and can the New York fans behave themselves? That's also top of the list. But if you're not a golf fan, I promise you will still like this show. We're not going to break down the coaches' golf games. It's not like a Hugh Freeze situation, if you followed that story, for all the golf he played down at Auburn in the offseason, but it will be fun. We're gonna break these sides down. 5 players per team, one captain. Obviously, I'll be choosing for one side. Bryan will be choosing for the other. Bryan, you kind of were able to put together the rules. I'm going to let you walk the people through how we're going to break this down as we look for the real captain of the Big East.
All right, so we basically Matt chose Pitino, and I was Team Hurley, and we would go back and forth. So those were natural captains, right? Those were absolutely natural captains. So we're going to break this down. We're going to draft each coach. There'll be one coach left out. We will talk about that coach briefly, I guess, because he's not part of the rest of the show. Foursomes. We're going to have 2 matchups. We're going to pair 2 coaches together and to see how they're and we're going to go head to head and see who's the better combination together. All right. Does that make sense, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. We're basically combining.
I know me and you've been kind of with the format.
We've been combining alternate shot and the foursomes is what we're doing there. We're going to cut it down for time's sake, and also because you get the idea. Can these guys match up? Who actually has similar styles inside the Big East, and who do we think are similar style of coaches as we match them up?
Okay, and then we're going to go to individual matchups, which obviously I know enough about the Ryder Cup that this is the Sunday thing where they're one-on-one. There's no alternating shots. There's nothing like that. It's just one-on-one. Who's the better golfer? 18 holes, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to match our teams 5 and 5 and see how they are judged, and we'll go. And then the final showdown, we're gonna discuss Rick and Dan, because this is where this version of the Big East Energy Weekly was born from. So we got to start there in episode 1.
Right, and we got to make sure we save that until the end. But it is going to be a very intriguing thing. Here's the deal. Team Pitino against Team Hurley. And because I'm younger, I got first pick. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. A lot of people are shocked by that statement just now, but
It is,
we're ready to
especially
go.
if they're looking at the screen and they're looking at the hairlines. Yes, I would agree that people
Well,
would
I got
have
a little
gone the
gray
other way.
now in my beard, so I don't know. Maybe we're even.
I put that into my contract. If we were going to appear on camera together, you had to just at least let it go a little bit for me.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. So you got Pitino, I got Danny. You got Rick Pitino.
I was going to say, let's be specific here. The elder Pitino, the legend, the guy that just wins no matter where he goes. I know we'll get to that conversation a little bit later on. Shall we start our draft?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I have the first pick. We'll go snake style then therefore. I'll get one pick. Bryan will get two. I'll get two. Bryan will get two. And then we'll wrap it up. I am going to take, I don't think there's a big question. Obviously, if tier one is Pitino and Hurley, and I think they have separated themselves from the field, I think there is its own tier unto itself. It's why I decided I wanted the one pick when I got to choose for being younger. You made that rule up. Thank you, by the way. I got to choose, and I picked the one guy who I think is clearly the third best coach in the Big East. Anybody that has any type of conversation that suggests otherwise, I would be stunned. It is Greg McDermott at Creighton. Look at what the man has been able to accomplish during his time with the Blue Jays to bring them into the Big East and immediately win, immediately take Villanova to task the way they did in the heart of Jay Wright's tenure, get to the second round. And then after he lost his son, lost Ethan Wragge, and had to rebuild, all he did was take 2 years to get it back into a perennial tournament team, and he's been there ever since. He was flat out robbed by the officials a couple years ago, or he would have broke through and got to a Final Four. He is the most automatic thing you could argue in this conference now that Jay Wright has retired and Dan Hurley has not technically reached the there long enough category to be put into the mix in terms of conversation. But in the new iteration of the Big East, nothing has been more consistent the entire time from start to finish than McDermott's teams winning and winning big. He is the automatic choice for me in this pick.
I love that you're picking him third because I think there is an argument there for the third slot. I think Shaka Smart is in that discussion. Shaka has been able to win at VCU, right? Went to the Final Four. Went to Texas, struggled a little bit. I'll admit it. But if you look at his record, he was over 500 every single time except 1 year. All right, so like it's tough to win at Texas. Sean Miller is going to learn that this year. Like it doesn't matter how much money and the nice facilities, it's still tough to win at Texas. It's been proven. And then he comes to Marquette.
It's tough to win in March in Texas.
It's not tough to win in March.
In the regular
he still had 19
season.
wins, 19 wins, 21 wins, 19 wins. Like he still had 21 seasons, 19, 21 seasons. It just wasn't. They were putting the money and what they weren't getting up. They go through coaches all the time, right? Then he comes to Marquette, and look what he does, man. He's the standard. Like everyone's talking about transfer portal this year, right? Talking about transfer portal, who you got. Shaka stays, and everyone's still putting him at fourth, right? They're like if you power rank the teams, most of the teams stay at fourth because he's so consistent. And I think there is a discussion there. Are you wrong by picking Greg McDermott third? No, but I think that discussion is closer than what you try to portray. That it basically was. Greg was a clear cut number 3. That's all I'm saying. I'm no disrespect. I don't think you go wrong with either guy.
I can concede to you that maybe I slight Shaka Smart a little bit. And look, what Shaka Smart did at VCU was nothing short of remarkable. He didn't build VCU. He followed in the footsteps of two really good coaches, obviously, in Jeff Capel and then Anthony Grant. But he took them to another level, getting them to a Final Four. And then what he was able to move on and go to Texas. I know it didn't work out at Texas, but as you alluded to, it was not a disaster. He's done a remarkable job at Marquette. Everything that people thought Gene Wojciechowski would be, Shaka Smart has been at Marquette. He has turned them into a perennial winner. And you're right. It is purely out of respect that I have Marquette number 4 in my preseason poll. I don't know what to make of that team coming into the year, but I figure that Shaka will get it figured out. That being said, I'm not entirely sure what to make of Creighton this year. They lost some critical pieces, obviously. Now they've restacked, but you know the reason why I have Creighton penned in number 3 ahead of Marquette? Because McDermott is a better coach. He's proven to be over the years. He has won with it different iterations, and he has success in March. He has not broken through and gotten to a Final Four. I understand that Shaka Smart has. That seems like a lifetime ago now, though at this point it was a fairy tale ride, and he has had two really good programs since then that he has been unable to replicate the success. What he has done in March the last couple years at Marquette has been downright frustrating. I don't even think disappointing does it justice. They should have had more success with those teams that he has put on the court. And it's hard to put your finger on exactly why everything unravels in March, but he's got to get it figured out. And until he does, I cannot put him above McDermott. And then also, mind you, McDermott brought a program from the Missouri Valley Conference and lifted them into the Big East and immediately hit the ground running, then lost all of his players and was able to regroup on the fly and within a couple of years turn them into a perennial tournament team. To me, that's the difference maker. Shaka Smart didn't have to build VCU. He took over a great program at VCU, lifted it to another level. McDermott, I understand that Creighton was a great program, but Shaka Smart didn't have to bring them from the CAA to the Big East. McDermott had to take a very good mid-major program and turn them into a power conference team in the blink of an eye, and was able to do it, and has only built upon that success and built it into a different level of perennial contender inside the conference. To me, yes, I was maybe too dismissive of Shaka Smart, but no, it is not a debate. It is Coach Matt.
We'll carry on with the draft. We're not going to ruin all the show before the draft's over. Like, we got the rest of the show.
I wanted to see if I could maybe get a that's a good point from you. I didn't know what we'll keep that a counter to see if
you're going to need all the Greg McDermott help you can get right now. You're like, you might as well call up the Roll J's boys right now, because that's what you're sounding like right now. And I'm just waiting for Casey to pop up on the screen right now.
Hey, Casey has some good reason to be proud of Coach Mack. He knows how good he's been. But now you get the next two picks. You're right. Here's your chance to really take control and maybe get a leg up. Who you got?
I'm just going to say checkmate. I have Kevin Willard from Villanova. All right. That's your guy, man. You're sleeping on your guy. You're sleeping on your guy, and he's my guy, right? I just went on the show 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I love Kevin Willard. I love Kevin Willard. He took over Seton Hall program. He took over an Iona program, first of all, made them competitive. 21 seasons at Iona. I know Pitino's done it after him, but before him, Willard did it. Then he comes over to Seton Hall, and it was a mess, man. Bobby Gonzalez, it was a mess. Like, I just can't explain how much it was a mess. 21 season, second season there. And that was before the transfer portal. So you had to really change your team a little bit more, not like, oh, well, we'll just spend more money. They're a consistent power in the Big East, right? Like, they're always a 21 season, a lot of good seasons. Okay, did he have success in March? Whatever. We'll discuss that later. Then he goes to Maryland. He takes over a Maryland program that's kind of floundering, right? Like, it wasn't great. They were a distraction away from possibly knocking off Florida. Actually, in my bracket, I had them beating Florida. So Kevin Willard, which maybe that discredits me a little bit that I had Maryland beating Florida, but Kevin Willard's able to build programs, and he wins wherever he goes. And that's the biggest thing. He won 62% of his games at Maryland. So obviously he knows what he's doing in the Big Ten. 59% at Seton Hall, all-time winningest coach at Seton Hall. This is a great get for you guys at Villanova, but I love Kevin Willard, and I think he's perfect at the 5 spot. So your pick on number 6.
That's a killer. I'm not going to lie to you. There were 2 picks that I figured would go back to back, and I was really hoping that because they have eerily similar resumes, you would go the other direction. One is probably closer to winning right now, and that's going to be my next pick. It is Ed Cooley from Georgetown. Here's the thing about Ed Cooley and Kevin Willard. I mean, neither one had a ton of success at the previous stop and in the NCAA tournament, but they built a program that had hit some hard times back into a perennial winner. They did it by building strong cultures. They did it by identifying talent that was a little bit under the radar screen and developing players. And they did it by kind of just moving pieces around and figuring out a way to win with the current team that they had. There was no automatic, this is the system, this is the only way we can do it. And if we don't have the guys that can fit those pegs, those round pegs in those square holes, no, they would figure out a way to either mold the holes or mold the pegs and get it done. So I think they are eerily similar. So I will go Ed Cooley here, obviously. Here's the thing at Georgetown, most people would pick them ahead of Villanova this year. I think it's a 50-50 toss-up. I'm a little concerned about Georgetown's jump shooting. If we are blatantly honest, Ed Cooley's team needs to be able to put the ball in the basket. I'm unsure if he's been able to do it. I'm a little bit confused as to why it has taken so long to get this thing off the ground with the Hoyas. I thought they'd be further along by now. At the same time, you can't argue that he took over an absolute mess. I mean, it was beyond repair, it seemed at times during the end of the Patrick Ewing era. They wanted to do anything but fire the greatest player in program history, and yet they were left with no choice but to do so. Ed Cooley had to kind of clean up that mess, make amends behind the scenes with the way the rules were evolving and the NIL scene coming along, and figure out a way to get some money into the program, get some excitement into the program, and then start to find some players. Last year was a disappointment. It was ugly. I know they had injuries. I thought that the injuries maybe have been overstated just a tad by the Georgetown people and how much that derailed their season. I thought it wasn't going in a good direction before a lot of the problems started to creep up, but it certainly took away any of their opportunities to kind of right the ship and get things settled second half of the season. This is a big proving year for Ed Cooley. He's got to get it done this season, but I think he's in a pretty good spot to do so, at least to challenge for the NCAA tournament. I think they'll come up short, but he has built Georgetown from an absolute mess to a team that you can go into the year thinking, hey, they got a chance to make the NCAA tournament. To me, that's a good option. You combine what he did at Providence and what he did at Fairfield. I think there's no doubt about the fact that Ed Cooley knows how to coach. He doesn't necessarily know how to exit a situation, but neither does your pick either, Kevin Willard. So, and we're both guys that like those two coaches, but let's be honest, they got to work on their exits. But right now they're trying to work on their teams to avoid exits before March even begins.
The only question I have for your pick, without getting too much into the weeds and using all my bullet points for the matchups, is it too early to have a guy with a warm seat? Is it too early in the draft, in terms of our draft, to have a guy, because there's other guys in here that aren't on a hot seat? I would say Ed Cooley is on one of the warmest seats in the Big East. And
I've heard people say that. I disagree. I really do, though, Brian, because who does Georgetown hire if Ed Cooley doesn't work?
Okay,
I'm dead serious about that. Like, where do you go from here? You hired the probably best case scenario hire. If you don't give him more time than this to get it figured out, and he did take over a mess, then you're good luck trying to find somebody else that is jumping at the opportunity to take that job. I think Ed Cooley has this year, next year, and maybe the year after that to get it figured out. And I think the people at Georgetown want this to work so desperately and understand they really don't have any other option. I don't think that the seat is actually warm. I think fans will start to get frustrated, and I think that is understandable. I would have no issue, no qualms with fans starting to wonder what the heck's going on with Ed Cooley. But realistically, there's no chance he's going anywhere at the end of the season unless it was just a historic bottom falling out. And even then, I think he would get one more year.
Fair enough. Next pick.
All right, then here is the guy. Quite honestly, I probably would have picked him over Cooley, but I felt I had to pick Cooley next just for the integrity of the draft. But my next pick is Chris Holtmann. Not so much for what he's done at DePaul, although that was a pretty good debut season. That was a better product, obviously, by the end of last year than what he took over. And, oh, by the way, they brought in a lot of pieces in the offseason. They're one of my surprise teams. I think they have a chance to challenge for middle of the pack in the Big East this year. I think Chris Holtmann's a good coach. It didn't fit at Ohio State. He did not mesh with the money. But if you look at what he actually accomplished, he got to the NCAA tournament 4 of his 6 years. He got to the second round in half of his seasons at Ohio State. He was a perennial winner at Butler. I know he inherited a good situation, but it is still very easy to see things unravel, as we have learned since his departure with the Bulldogs. And if you pump through serum into the Butler fans, and I got to play golf with a couple of them this summer up in Michigan, some donors for the Butler program, and I asked them point blank, would you rather have Chris Holtmann back or the situation you're in right now? So 100 times out of 100, we'd take Chris Holtmann tomorrow. So I think that speaks volumes for the kind of coach he is. The fact that he won as consistently as he did at Butler, the fact that he can come down to DePaul and give them reason to believe this quickly, that's a heck of a coach. I think that's a steal at this stage of the draft. I'm real happy with that pickup.
That's a pretty good pick. I would have took him over Cooley, honestly. And I would have took my next pick over Cooley as well, and that's Shaheen Holloway. I think Shah is a better coach than – oh, yeah, it's 100% a homer pick. And at this point in the draft, and you play fantasy football, I'm guessing, you start to – it's the end of the draft. You want a guy that you can root for, right? Like, I'm a Patriots fan, right? There aren't many guys out there, but when I was drafting this fall, I was always trying to get Hunter Henry because he was our only offensive weapon. And so I'm taking Shah because Shah, obviously, how many coaches on here have an Elite Eight on the record? I'm just asking.
At St. Peter's, by the way. Yes.
It was at St. Peter's, but how many?
I'm saying that makes it that much more impressive.
To give more credit, yeah. How many coaches have an Elite Eight on there, right?
Okay.
How many coaches can recruit at a high level? He can. For Seton Hall, he can go connect with the players. Obviously, he basketball-wise, actual skill-wise, might be the best out of all this. I had to go with Shah, right? I had to go Shah at this point of the draft. You have to go with Shah. And then my last pick, this is Ed Cooley time, I guess, is Kim English. Another guy that can recruit well. Obviously, you see what he does in transfer portal. He's been able to get a haul. Even though losing Bryce Hopkins, he still comes and gets a couple guys, and we'll talk about it as we go on. He's modern. He played in the NBA. Like, he's one of those coaches that when you're talking about the 9th, 10th best coach in your conference, this is a pretty good one, right? Is he on a hot seat? Not going to disagree. That's the reason why I think Cooley's on a hot seat as well, because I think year 3 for both of these guys is a big year because, let's be honest, Georgetown and Providence hate each other, right? And there's a measuring contest right now.
Cats and dogs.
So if Cooley really outperforms Kim English, I can see that seat being really hot. If they're kind of the same, I could see it kind of evening off. So Kim English, I took over your last pick and the guy that was left out. So Kim, I don't know where I'm going to use you in terms of this foursome matchups and the individual matchups and how we're gonna do this, but I'm glad you're on the team.
I got a feeling that he might only be an individual participant, but we'll see how you decide to captain your team. Those are the decisions that decide who will lift the prestigious Big East Ryder Cup. So we'll get to that in a moment. This is another decision, by the way. What a pick I have in front of me. I can go with Thad Matta, who has been to a couple of national championship games, if you want to go with the Career Achievement Award, or I could go with Richard Pitino, who probably is going to finish either last or second to last in the Big East this year, but who has won twice at mid-major programs, who has as good a pedigree as you will find, considering the fact that his dad is one of the GOATs in the sport, but who clearly had big-time struggles during his tenure in major college basketball in Minnesota. I'm not going to pretend the Minnesota time did not exist for Richard Pitino. I have question marks about how he will adjust to major college basketball. And I'm sorry to all the Mountain West fans. I am not lifting you up to that level, even though the NCAA tournament committee seems determined to do so on an annual basis. I still have you as a mid-major. But for Richard Pitino, I'm very intrigued to see what he can do at Xavier. He was a guest on our newest member of the Big East Energy Network, the episode that debuted yesterday on the Xavier podcast, and I was really interested in what he had to say. Thought he was really engaging, which is a good sign that he's trying to reach out to the fan base, and that's going to be very necessary there in Cincinnati. They have very loyal fans. They have very engaged fans, but they need more of them, or they need the fans they had to start to give some more money because they are a little bit short on the NIL funds. That will be a big part of the process if he's ultimately going to be successful. But I'm interested to see what he can do in Act 2 at the major conference level. Meanwhile, Thad Matta, I've seen what he's done here in Act 2 at Butler. It just doesn't seem fully engaged. Nice guy, very good basketball coach, has had a whale of a career. I just don't have a ton of faith in him right now. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, but it just does not seem like the same Thad Matta we saw when he was so intense as a coach that he'd spit his gum out and just without even thinking about it, pick it back up, put it in his mouth. That was disgusting, but it was a sign of a guy that was locked in on what he was doing. I don't see him move much from the bench anymore. I know he's got some health problems and he's not as young as he used to be, but that kind of is what we're talking about. It's just not that same fiery guy. So I'm going Richard.
Richard Pitino. By the way, you watched the interview already? I know it came out. How much does he remind you of his dad? Like even his mannerisms. I really haven't followed him at New Mexico and Minnesota and all the stops, and he was an assistant wherever. But actually, listen to him talk for about 30 minutes. Like he is just like Slick Rick. So if we're doing this show, if we're lucky enough to do the show in 10 years. It might be Dan Hurley going against Little Richard.
Well, if you read Dan Hurley's book, he won't be around in 10 years. He seems to be questionable if he's going to be around in 10 years.
That's true. I guess I got to find another one, but yeah.
But he was very impressive. And also, I would argue that he probably is the second most eerily similar to his dad in terms of major sports right now. My title for that still has to go with No Eagle to Iron Eagle. I mean, that is just spooky when you watch them do games on back-to-back days. You think that Noah and Ian might be the same person, and then you realize it's a father-son. But Richard and Rick, they are very similar, and they have very similar ideas on coaching basketball. But does Richard have that in-game adjustment ability? He's shown it at times. No one does it better than Rick. Can Richard kind of improve at that and move it to the next level like he was able to do in the Mountain West?
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that ride because I think Xavier is one of those programs that could be like help the Big East rise to the power conference again, right? Like everyone questions it. I still believe it's a power conference, but I think they need programs like Georgetown, Providence, Seton Hall, Xavier to be really competitive all the time to get those 5, 6, 7 slots in the Big East tournament in this NIL area. So
to me, the Big East is a power conference. It just needs more depth. But when you have two teams that perennially are either in the mix for a Final Four or have a legitimate chance to reach the Final Four when the tournament starts, you're a power conference. Now they need that second tier to be a bit more consistent to earn that respect from the committee. So here's the draft. Here's what we got. A little bit of editorializing, I noticed, from our graphics guru, Bryan, as he's somehow named my team Slick Rick. I'll let it go. No team lunatic over on your side when it talks about Hurley or team.
I was going to, but Mark runs the Big East Energy Network, and I wasn't trying to kill Hurley. And he's a Seton Hall guy, man. I'm not gonna crush the Seton Hall alum. So.
That is very fair. All right, so I'm going 2 Patinos, and then I'm going 2 guys that you could argue had better success at their previous stops, but are still good coaches, and Greg McDermott. You're going Shaka, who used to be the boy wonder and has now turned into the seasoned vet at Marquette. Kevin Willard, who is trying to remake a blue blood inside the conference. Your boy Shah, and then Kim English, who needs a big year in the worst way possible. So that's the results of the draft. Now let's get to our Ryder Cup format. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to unveil our pairings for each day, and we're then going to let you give us the winner in the comments. That's what we want from you when this thing is all said and done. So as we look at our foursomes, which is the alt shot format in the proverbial Ryder Cup, we're kind of combining alt shot with the 4-ball competitions. So we got 2 matchups. That means that one guy from each team is sitting. Bryan, I will let you unveil your first team first. We'll go matchup style. So your matchup, and then I'll say who they'll face, and then I'll go next, and you will say who you face.
Okay. Their graphics, the graphics here are not implying anything. They were just everyone has, even Thad Matta is going to have a graphic here, so I don't want you to imply. All right. So my number 1 combination, I'm going to use Hurley right off the bat, and I'm going to use. Ooh, this is tough, man. I'm the biggest thing is like I know what my dream matchup would be, but I'm trying to figure out because we did not talk about this ahead of time. I'm trying to figure out how you're going to counteract with me. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna go 1-2. I'm gonna go Hurley and Shaka. I think you don't have a combination that can beat that at all. Shaka and Hurley are both culture builders. Both teams have their own identity. Both can develop talent. Both have been to Final Fours. One has a couple national championships. Both one is offensive genius, and another one is the havoc defense. Right. I just think the combination of those two together makes it impossible for you to match up two guys to take me out. So I'm gonna hope for a split here from the comments below on who wins this matchup because I just don't think you're gonna be able to overtake these two because I think I got a guy that can putt and I think I got a guy that can drive. So
That's fair. I mean, I think that's a good pick. I would concede that you are a heavy favorite at this stage of his career. Hurley is one of the best. I could counter with my two guys. I might be able to win if I go with my two best, but that's a big gamble, and then I think I'm in trouble in the next matchup. So instead, what I'm going to do is I am going to go with Ed Cooley. I'm going to put Ed Cooley out there, okay, in
the
this slot,
sacrificial
and
lamb.
yeah. I'm gonna put Ed Cooley out there, and then I am going to put him with Greg McDermott because Greg McDermott, I think, has had as much success over the course of his career against Danny Hurley as anybody you'll find. Those matchups seem to frustrate Danny Hurley. They seem to take him to a different level of psychosis in the week leading up to those games. And we have seen him absolutely lose his mind on multiple occasions at the officials after matchups with Creighton. Now, I can concede that happens against a lot of teams, but it seems to happen against Creighton most. There's something about Mac that frustrates Hurley. He has had a lot of success, Hurley has, against Mac, but Mac has held his own against teams that you could argue are much more talented. So I'll go with Mac, and then I'll go with Cooley because I think Mac and Cooley's styles fit pretty nicely. Both build strong cultures. Both are guys that really talk about family all the time. And I know that the Providence fans will roll their eyes as I say that, but that is one of the things that Ed Cooley finds a way to get his players to buy in on 100%. Think it's a big deal. Think that I would have a fighter's chance in that one. Don't think I'm going to win the vote, but I think that that's a good strategy on my part. Mac and Cooley.
All right, that sounds good. I think there's no way you can overtake my 1-2 combination. Just unless you went Pitino and McDermott, I think you can compete there. I'm interested to see where you're going on the next one. Because I think that's the one where I'm gonna have a struggle to try to match up with it. And I think I know where you're going without even
my
pre-gaming.
game plan was to go Pitino family. I mean, it would be like the Hal Sutton move when he put Phil and Tiger together. It's for the better of the game. It would be the entertainment value, obviously, alone in our Ryder Cup. NBC would be all over us to find a way to fit the Patinos together out there. But I can't do that. I'm going Holtman and Pitino. I really think that you get that coaching genius together. I like Kevin Willard. I think he's a really good coach. I think that he is the second best coach of those three, but I think it's really close between him and Holtman. And then I don't think your next option is anywhere near either of my two guys. So I feel really good about that combination. I don't think you have any chance here whatsoever. I'm going Rick. I'm going Holtman.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have a pirate themed combination here with Shaw and Willard, right? The last two coaches at Seton Hall. I thought you were going Pitino, and that's the reason why I used Hurley and Shaka, because I was like, well, those two have obviously worked together in the past, Pitino and Pitino. Willard and Shaw have worked together in the past. Shaw was his assistant at Seton Hall before he went over to St. Pete. These guys would blend perfectly. They've worked together. Obviously, they'd be able to navigate a hole, right? Am I talking the right golf term?
Absolutely. Well done. Well done.
Shaw will be able to connect. Willard would be able to game plan together. I just think they would figure it out. And honestly, they were together when Seton Hall probably had their best era. So I'm happy with my two matchups here now. I thought you were going Pitino, and I thought that was going to be a tough hill to climb. But I think we could take out the Slick Rick and Chris Holtmann
Okay,
combination with the Seton Hall.
here's my counter to that, Bryan. You said that you have picked Holtmann above Cooley. Holtmann would have been your next pick in the order of the draft. You're combining two guys you would have drafted after Holtmann, and that's my second best option in this scenario.
Oh
So
no, I would have took Willard. I would have took Willard over Holtmann.
okay, all right, but
It's shot. I would have took Holtmann over Cooley. I would have took Holtmann over. I would have took Holtmann, basically anyone after the top 5.
okay. So, but then you would agree that Pitino's better coach than Willard?
I'm not going to agree to anything with.
And you would agree, and by that logic, that
Like
same
Rick.
logic, you would seem to be conceding that you think Holtmann is a better coach than Seton.
Pitino's a great coach.
Honestly,
Willard would know a little bit, right? Being on his staff and everything.
Protege.
Willard would know how
Protege.
to counteract with Rick Pitino. So I think I got a puncher's chance.
That's the other reason, by the way, I went against the Pitino combination. I'm kind of like Team USA. You're kind of like Team Europe. You're going for that bonding thing and all the good vibes. I'm just trying to put the best coaches out there and let them go to work and cook their stew. And I feel like the talent will win out. And if I had gone Pitino, Willard would have understood the special sauce and might have been able to throw a wrinkle in that. So I could not let a guy that has been as close almost to Rick over the course of his coaching career, obviously not as close personally as his son, but you know, Richard Pitino has worked for Rick for a while, but it was Kevin Willard that was there with him on 3 different stops on his way to becoming a head coach at Iona. And his dad was Pitino's right-hand man well before that on the bench at Louisville. So they know each other real well. So I had to throw you for a loop and get some different ideas out there with Holtmann. All right, so that's the matchups in the alt shot. We have that set. Keep that in mind. Think about who you would vote for in terms of the winners. Feels like a split to me, but I would understand that if you wanted to give my Pitino team both wins, that would make sense. Let's go to the singles. Game day strategy, styles, sideline antics. Love that you included that as you are Team Hurley. That makes complete sense.
Says the guy that dresses in an all white suit, but whatever.
Hey, you did call him Slick Rick. He's Slick Rick for a reason. And he had some other recruiting strategies at his time at Louisville that we don't need to go into here at the current moment. But let's just say he'll do whatever it takes to land a player, although he will tell you that he had nothing to do with any of those things. And I just want to make sure that we put that on the record. Those were rogue assistants that did that stuff at Louisville. But all right, let's go through our matchups. Bryan, I feel like the fairest way to do this, should we go in reverse draft order rather than trying to mix and match so the matchups are relatively even?
That works out perfectly, because then the final showdown will right. That's perfect, man. You're a genius. I didn't think about that.
That is, I wouldn't say that. My wife somewhere.
Well, I also saw your draft order, so I obviously it was just nice.
All right, so your last pick was Kim English, correct?
Yep.
And my last pick was Richard Pitino. So we're going Richard Pitino against Kim English. What a matchup of the Titans. I'll let you make your argument first.
Well, I just think Kim has proven that he can get 20 wins in the Big East, first of all, right? Pitino wasn't amazing at Minnesota, his last big power job. He was good at New Mexico, but Kim was good at George Mason as well in 2 years. He turned them into 20-win season. I just feel Kim was my last pick. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not like, he didn't make my combinations. He wasn't even under consideration when I love you, Kim English. Province fans, don't kill me, but I think he recruits well. I think he connects well. I think his teams play a modern basketball game, which is nice to see. I think he is under a lot of pressure here at Providence, but like they lost Hopkins early in the transfer portal on March 31st, right? That same day, he got Daquan Davis and Duncan Powell. Like he was able to react almost instantly. He didn't sit on his hands. Jason Edwards obviously is a bucket. Jalen Sellers, so he's able to connect with players and get guys. He just has to execute on the field. And actually, this is kind of a nice combination, a good matchup here. Game day strategy. I said the modern. I'll just go down here real quick. Modern game. So obviously his game day strategy is good. His style, he's very quiet, kind of like he picks and chooses when he wants to be out there. Sideline antics, he's normal, I would say. Recruiting, he's able to connect. March success, 0. So he's probably going to struggle on that 5-hole. Player development, he got a guy to the NBA draft his first season. And dramatics icon, I'm not worried about that.
Hear what you're saying, but in terms of icon, you're the one to put it on the list. I mean, he is a Pitino. People love the Pitino name. That's royalty in coaching. I think that's one of the reasons why there was a lot of programs around the country pining for him to take over. Here's the thing I will say about this matchup of why I think it shifts in my favor and why I quite honestly probably would have picked Richard Pitino over Kim English. I think Kim English has a chance to still resurrect things in Providence. I think his entire fan base is pretty frustrated with him and running out of patience quickly. I think it's going to be a long year for Richard Pitino this season at Xavier. As I said earlier, I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that things didn't work out at Minnesota. I do have some questions of how he adjusts to this level, but Minnesota is a god-awful job. Almost no one wins at Minnesota, so I'm willing to give him a mulligan since we're using the golf theme. And on top of that, he had success at 2 Mountain West Conference programs. He was very good at New Mexico at a time when the NCAA committee told us that the Mountain West Conference was better than the Big East. Still questionable on that thought process, but that's what they told us, and he was winning consistently there. I also think that he connects with his players. That's the one thing that we have really seen in the later stages of Richard Pitino's career that seems to be working, and that, you know, when you listen to him talk about what he's going to try to build at Xavier, he seems to be trying to go out of his way to build a rapport with the fan base and to kind of sow some loyalty, and I think that will reap him dividends. That's why I go Pitino. I think that's a pretty close matchup. We'll let the fans decide as we see who ends up coming out on the better end of our first Sunday single. So then the next matchup, Shaheen Holloway for you against Chris Holtmann for me. Oh, I like that. I like that matchup, Bryan. I'm going to go first. As I have said, if you look at Holtmann's success at Butler, I understand he didn't get to an Elite Eight. I give Shah all the credit in the world. That run at St. Peter's, I was at the Sweet 16 win over Purdue. He absolutely outcoached Matt Painter. I mean, it was still, I cannot understand what Painter was trying to do for Purdue. I do not know why he left 2 big guys on the floor. Shah spread the floor, beat him off the bounce over and over again. It was a coaching clinic. I thought he had a pretty good season at Seton Hall 2 years ago. Didn't get the job done to get into the tournament. Absolutely collapsed on him last year, and I don't see a great plan for him to get out of it. Not all his fault. I do understand that. Chris Holtmann took over a worse situation and it seemed to instantly lift the floor and rise the ceiling. That's a pretty good combination for a coach. We'll see what he does this year, but look what he did at Butler. He won year after year. Even in disappointment at Ohio State, he was in the tournament 67% of the time, in the second round 50% of the time, and now he has DePaul with a pulse. That's pretty good.
So we're allowed to give Richard Pitino a mulligan on his prior jobs, right? But we're not allowed to give Shah a mulligan on last season's debacle.
No, we can give him a mulligan, but most people think he's going to finish last this year, Bryan.
Well, that's because if you look at these media polls, they always say the wrong team is going to finish last. I'm just going to say I think they were projected to be in 9th or 8th last year, and they finished in last, and it was a debacle season, the worst Seton Hall season that I can remember, and that there's a lot of bad Seton Hall seasons. Shah is better than Holtmann because Shah, first of all, is icon, right? Shah, he's got that photo with Kobe, right? And he's got those March Madness. I know we're arguing coaching, but I think that comes part of the charm if you have a long-term history, even on the court. Player development. He developed those St. Peter kids to be an elite 8 school. Is he developing talent right now? I would say yes, but with the transfer portal, everyone leaving, it's tough. It's tough to really judge that unless you get a guy that stays 2-3 years. It's really tough to judge that player development. So we'll see what Shah does. Right? He brought in Najee Hines, a top 60 recruit, the 4th greatest recruit in Seton Hall history on 24/7. Right? So we'll see how he develops now, Jay Hines.
All right,
Talk
here's
about
one.
March success. You want an Elite Eight or an NIT championship? Like, which one do you want? Which one you want? That's way better than Holman. It doesn't matter. If Holman had a CBI championship, you probably should be out here talking about it. Recruiting, he's able to get a few guys. Sideline antics, Donald Copeland will attest that Shaw's all business on the sideline, and his style is perfect for Jersey. And I just think he's a perfect matchup in this four, and he can overtake Chris Holman. And I'll go on the record and say that they'll finish above DePaul this year.
You know what? We shall see. If that ends up happening, I will retroactively say that you are right. I don't think most people think that will happen. And one last thing, the sideline annex. I hear what you're saying. Shaw's sideline demeanor wasn't great last year. I think even you would concede that. And he had conceded that in the offseason. He's got to get better at that.
Well, define great. Define great. Like if
poor.
If
it
you're
was
talking
poor.
about entertainment,
it was bad.
If you're talking about entertaining,
all right. It was entertaining to see how he would pout each game. I do agree with that. Let's go on to our next matchup. Here's one I'm going to concede right now. I don't love the matchup, but I will try to make the argument anyway. It's Ed Cooley against Kevin Willard. Ed Cooley and Kevin Willard have eerily similar resumes. Kevin Willard had a better breakthrough, I thought, last year at Maryland, but Ed Cooley on the whole has arguably had more consistent March success. Ed Cooley, I thought, as bad as Seton Hall was, I thought it was impressive what Ed Cooley was able to do with Providence and how he built it. I thought you could argue was a little bit more difficult, and the way he was able to get an entire community to absolutely fall in love with him. I understand that those feelings have since evaporated, but boy, did he have the entire Providence community bought into that program. And if they had NIL then, the way that NIL exists now, boy, I think Ed Cooley could have brought in some really good players. He's rebuilt NIL at Georgetown. They all of a sudden have become a player that can start to pay some money. They still have a ways to go there, but it has certainly improved. Everybody knows who Ed Cooley's name is. There is zero at this point college basketball fans that aren't going to instantly identify him, and his recruiting chops very good in the DMV, and really recruited well above his head during his time at Providence. Brought in some really good pieces. That's why they were a perennial tournament team. And the biggest negative on Ed Cooley, Kevin Willard has the exact same strike against him. They are a mess in breakups. I mean, they just don't do it very well. They need to go listen to some cheesy 80s songs about how you go and break up with somebody because they're terrible at it. But if that's the worst thing that you can say, maybe I could steal this one. Go ahead, make your case. I feel like it's going to be a good one.
Willard didn't do it to his home region, right? Like he didn't do it to where he grew up and everything, which is kind of even worse, right? It's like
Willard did it twice.
He did do it twice, but I'm going to go with Willard because he's a chiropractor. I know Patrick Madden loves to use that nickname, and he figures it out. It might not be perfect right off the bat, but he figures it out. And I'm extremely jealous of Villanova because they are able to get that chiropractor. He was able to figure out Seton Hall. He figured out Maryland. If he gets NIL support, I'm telling you, he's going to figure out Villanova. It seems like he already has. If you watch your show, Holy Nova, it already seems like he's already drinking beers with the legends and inviting them to practice and everything, and that's figuring out Villanova. Willard is the perfect guy that's going to figure out on game day, right? His strategy. He will always compete. His sideline antics. I would like to include that with the press conference. He's entertaining. He's honest. He is moody. It's perfect. It's everything you want in a coach. He's got a lot of emotions, but he doesn't act a fool. Recruiting wise, he's pretty good on that, right? He got Lewis this year, right? He was able to steal Lewis right when he got over to Villanova, which was the late March success. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. Player development, he develops. All the Seton Hall guys were 3-4 guys, 3-4 year guys that developed into solid players. Isaiah Whitehead, Miles Powell, right? And iconic in Seton Hall, he's an icon, but I don't know if he's a national icon. Ed Cooley might be hipper, but in terms of, I love Kevin Willard. So
I think they're both unfortunately known as national villains, but they're
Yeah,
likable villains. That's the
yeah.
beauty of it. All right, we kind of already had this debate on our last matchup before we get to the main bout, but we'll succinctly bring it up, but we'll try to move through it quickly since we talked about it already. It is Shaka Smart from Marquette for Team Hurley against Team Pitino's venerable Coach Mac. You tried to make your case early. Even you didn't seem fully committed to it. Do you have anything else that you could say on your side?
Well, I just think if you don't have to go into the transfer portal, and maybe this is the Clemson Tiger fan in me, and my inner Dabo Sweeney's coming out right here. But if you don't have to go in the transfer portal and you still are able to win, then obviously you're doing something right, right? Like there's only 15 slots. I think Shaka's going to be fine in Marquette. I think it's people are foolish to predict them to be below, in the bottom half of the Big East because Shaka is able to develop player development, right? That's category number 6 there. He's able to develop these guys. He doesn't go in the transfer portal. He doesn't go hunt anyone, right? He's not worried about job security with the guys he already has. He's ready to go. Icon, come on, man. He's an icon. March success. He's had more success than McDermott, I would say, or at least bigger moments. Recruiting, obviously, he's recruiting. If he's winning with the guys and not going to the transfer portal, style, havoc, defense, game day strat. Actually, looking at this rundown right here, the 7 things we're judging on, I feel really confident, way better than without this visual cue for me.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I think Shaka can match up with
Yeah.
Greg McDermott now.
No, no, he cannot. I'm gonna just I almost just rested without making any type of an argument. I don't feel like you proved your case, but I'm going to follow up with one other thing. You said March success. That's funny. That's very funny. I understand that he went to a Final Four at VCU, but just ask the Marquette fans about Shaka's March success. I think they love Shaka Smart, but I think they'd love to start to win a little bit more in March. But I appreciate you bringing the humor to the show. But
So
we'll let
where's Greg's March success?
I got to the Elite Eight just a couple years ago and absolutely had it
Okay,
ripped
so Final
away and
Four.
stolen by the officials. How can you
I'm just
be
saying
a Big
it's
East
not
fan
clear cut
and not
when
be
you're comparing the two.
outraged at the absolute thievery that we saw on full display in the final minutes of that Elite Eight game between Creighton and San Diego State? You know it. The world knows it. Mac deserved to get to a Final Four. He was host. Let's move on to our main topic. The best coach in the Big East. Rick Pitino or Dan Hurley. Bryan, I let you begin. You take the floor. You have Dan Hurley.
It's simple, man. Like it's absolutely simple. If you watch UConn over the last 3-4 years, you know that they're the premier program in in the country, right? The March runs where they were destroying teams. They you want to call Kevin Willard a chiropractor? Dan Hurley's staff was just picking apart every single I just absolutely figuring out every single move. And he did it with really 2 different teams. Like I think people forget. I know Klingon was there, but like his stars, there's 2 different teams there. He's an NBA pipeline now. And when we compare that with Rick Pitino, well, I'll let you say that he was an NBA pipeline in the '90s, right? Modern championship, modern basketball, can recruit, can now work in the transfer portal. 60-minute specials, right? So obviously he's got to be an icon, right? He's got book deals.
Yeah. Yep.
Is he a little over the top on the sideline? Sure. I'm sure UConn fans will tell you that. But growing up in Connecticut, I don't think UConn fans really care. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, the state of Connecticut does not care how he acts as long as he doesn't hit someone. If he's passionate and thinks he was wrong by a referee and he tells the referee, that's okay. And they supported Jim Calhoun, right? They supported Jim Calhoun, not a dime back, right? Not a dime back, and that's okay. Hurley is also his offense, and I know a lot of it's Luke Murray and his staff and everything, but his offense is just picks apart any kind of defense, and he's able to adapt. And I think that's what gives him the step above Pitino because his game now translates to the NBA and it works in the college basketball. And I don't think Pitino does that. I don't think Pitino's style works on both levels right now.
Well, let's just pause
RJ
for a
Lewis,
second.
RJ Lewis and Kadari Richmond, right?
Okay,
Did they
you're
get drafted?
saying
they get
he's better
drafted?
at developing players for the NBA.
Developing
Okay.
players, and
I thought you were saying his style works for the NBA because the Lakers wanted to hire him, so you were automatically counting him as a successful NBA coach. I believe there was a time when the entire NBA wanted to hire Rick Pitino.
Yeah, and as a Celtics fan, I can
Pitino,
tell you that did not work.
No, it didn't. I'm
Larry
not
Bird's not walking
that.
through that door. Larry Bird, Robert Parrish not walking through that door.
Not. And he fired Red Auerbach. He did not do a good job with the Celtics. Got hosed with the Knicks. Probably would have done a much better job if they gave him a little bit more time. But it did not go well with the Celtics. Couldn't agree more. I would just argue that Rick Pitino's style fit the NBA better than Danny Hurley's style fits the NBA. If Danny Hurley actually did become an NBA coach, he was going to have to completely reinvent who he was as a person. It was going to be the most fascinating scientific experiment that we will have ever witnessed, and we have been absolutely robbed.
Since the 90s, we didn't see when the Celtics gave Pitino all that power, that was a science experiment, right? He's drafting Ron Mercer and trading Chauncey Billups. As a Celtic fan, I could tell you, he did not that was a science experiment.
Yeah,
give him all that power,
and him not getting the ping pong balls to bounce his way and land Tim Duncan. I totally agree. That was a mess, and I'll concede that too. Here's a look at Rick Pitino's resume, and I know you're going to tell me a lot of this is ancient history, but just give me a second. He went to the tournament at BU. He took Providence to the Final Four in year 2. He then took over Kentucky program in absolute shambles. Their head coach had been caught giving money to players in envelopes at the times when that was not within the rules of the NCAA. They were on full probation, weren't even allowed to be on TV. Got him to the Elite 8 in year 3. If it wasn't for a miracle shot by Christian Laettner, they'd probably win a national championship that year. Final Four in year 4, national title in 96. If not for a Miles Simon miracle, he wins back-to-back national championships. If he doesn't make the disastrous decision to go to the Celtics, they win another national championship the very next year. Even Tubby Raymond couldn't screw that team up, Even Tubby Smith couldn't screw that team up. They won a national championship that very next year. So 97 to 2001, I'll let you have that. That is a strike against him. Then he takes over Louisville. He takes over for an absolute legend. We all know how hard it is to take over for a legend. He fills in for Denny Crum. They had won 14 games the year before. In 16 seasons, never finishes with a losing record. He's in the tournament by year 2. The only year that they don't make the NCAA tournament when he's there, probation. He had some problems with the NCAA rules, no doubt about it. He ends up going to the tournament second year. 12 of the next 13, they're in the NCAAs, 3 Final Fours, wins a natty in 2013. So then he gets banished to the EuroLeague because of the NCAA infractions and some of the things that, again, he says an assistant did that it was improper with recruits. I'll let the world figure out whose fault that was and how much that really matters in these days of basketball. He wins a Greek professional basketball title. This was, by the way, 5 years ago. So it's not like we're talking
it's Greek to me. I don't know what
ancient history. He goes to Iona. You talked about it's not easy to win at Iona. He wins year 1, takes him to the NCAA tournament. Year 3, takes him to the NCAA tournament. Then he goes to St. John's. All we did was talk about, will St. John's ever just get back to a tournament? They are a mess of a program. They were starting to become DePaul. And then he wins 20 games year 1, gets screwed by the NCAA committee, figures it out year 2. They become a 2 seed, and they win a NCAA tournament game for the first time in 25 years. The man wins everywhere. You can say a lot of the winning was a long time ago. Well, yeah, he won a long time ago, but he also, this decade, this last 2 years, turned around a moribund program and turned them into a national power that many prognosticators have top 5 in the country coming into this season. He does it at places you would not expect to have success. He's done it at Blue Bloods. He's done it at every type of place except for the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. But in college basketball, which is what we're talking about, he has done it everywhere. In the Big East, which is what we're talking about, he has won 3 Big East regular season championships at 2 different schools. He has won 4 Big East tournament championships at 2 different schools. The man wins. And here's the other thing. I was at every year, I'm fortunate enough to go watch the first weekend of March Madness with a bunch of D1 basketball coaches, a lot of women's basketball coaches that I know from working on the broadcasting side. I like to think I know about basketball, but then I get into that room and just kind of listen, and you learn from people that know a lot more than you. But you ask questions, right? And the one thing when the St. John's game was on, I kind of was starting to pick their brain about what makes Pitino so great. And they all just could not stop talking about how meticulous he was, how much better his players get, how you can see the improvement from month to month, game to game, and just the skill development that takes place every single stop, no matter what generation of player that he's coaching. And in spite of all of his faults, the way he connects to his players, they do seem to, for the most part, like him. I know he had his issues last year at the end of the season with St. John's, but he builds a culture. It's a weird culture. It's an unorthodox culture, but it's a culture that's there. He also has become a wildly honest human being. If you listen to Rick Pitino give an interview these days, he just seems to give 0 Fs. He says whatever comes into his mind. It is the truth, at least as he sees it, and he spews it to you exactly as he views it. And then the last thing the coach has said about him was, if you look at the different places that he's won and the different ways that he has gone about winning, no one else can match him. No one else can kind of put together a program, no matter the situation, and almost instantly make it work. It's like looking at a puzzle that's 1,000 pieces and putting it together within 60 seconds. It's a freakish skill, as what Rick Pitino has. And as good as Danny Hurley is, and as impressive as what he has done at UConn is, it's one time, and it's UConn. Jim Calhoun won at UConn. I'd argue what Jim Calhoun did with Connecticut is more impressive than what Danny Hurley has done at Connecticut. Kevin Ollie, granted with Jim Calhoun's players, won a national championship at UConn. UConn is a program that values basketball and that is set up to succeed. It's easier to win at UConn than it is at most of the places where Rick Pitino has won.
So Kentucky's not a program to succeed. I know they were going through probation.
I will concede,
but they're not a blue blood.
I will concede that Kentucky
and Louisville. I know their logo is red, but like with Denny Crum, the legend that you're talking about, they won a national championship in the late '80s with Nervous Purvis, right?
Yeah, that was '86, and they
had they are not a program that is national.
Not the Rick Pitino Louisville, not the program that Rick Pitino took over. Remember, they weren't in the Big East yet at that point. That's the other thing.
St. John's wasn't a respectable program, right?
Like, first of all, not really. I mean, Brian Anderson was an absolute mess.
I would say
they sued him for incompetence.
In the late 90s, I would disagree with you. The early 2000s.
Late 90s is a long time ago, Brian.
Okay, and that's what you're talking about. A long time ago when you talk with Boston University, Providence College. Like, you're talking a long time ago.
I can see that.
And now, Danny Hurley is the best coach in college basketball. Like,
but I will concede that some of Pitino's – hold on. I will concede that some of Pitino's resume is a long time ago, but the point is he did all that stuff and then continues to do it now. He has a body of work that he just keeps adding to that gets more and more impressive, and he wins it no matter what situation you put him in. Now, if he gets to the tournament this year and they fall on their faces again, then I'm going to concede Danny Hurley's a better coach. But for right now, with what he has done at St. John's and where St. John's was when he took it over, as opposed to what Danny Hurley has had to work with, I just think it's a completely different thing. Rick Pitino, you said that Louisville is a blue blood program. Most people think of Louisville that way because of what Pitino did. I think Denny Crum was a phenomenal coach. He went to a couple of Final Fours. He's a Hall of Famer. They had fallen off in the 90s. The 90s were kind of a mess under Louisville. They were a fringe tournament team. Then at the end of his run, it all kind of fell apart. He takes over and rebuilds them and then takes them from a mid-major Conference USA into the big, bad, old school Big East and goes about dominating the conference while Jim Boeheim is still there, while Jim Calhoun is still there, while Pitt's rolling. It was unbelievable what he did at Louisville. I understand that there were some questionable ways that he accrued players, but everybody had questionable ways of accruing players back then, and there's no rules now that we have to worry about. The guy is an absolute menace of a coach, and he wins and he wins and he wins. And then if you kick him out, he goes somewhere else and he wins again. And he does so at the snap of a finger. And I just think that when you're talking about a guy that there's a lot of coaches out there that think is the GOAT, post John Wooden era, the GOAT. And it has had as much success as he's had at as many different places. I just don't know how you don't give him his flowers at this point in time.
Oh, I'm not saying Rick Pitino's not a great coach. Like, that's not my argument here. I think right now, Danny Hurley is the best coach in the country. Right now. I can't compare 1990 Rick Pitino and all his accolades that he did with Kentucky and all that, because Danny Hurley was playing basketball.
Okay, but here's the thing. You can tell me that Danny Hurley has had a great 5-year run. He absolutely has. It has been a wildly successful.
What about what he did with Rhode Island? Little old Rhodey in the A10.
I mean, they
NCAA tournaments the last 2 years. Then he goes over to Connecticut, who is floundering kind of as much as
he made 2 tournaments.
But they were floundering. Like Connecticut was floundering before the coming over the Big East. And Danny Hurley, like they were under 500.
They were a mess.
They weren't the blue blood until, and I'll give Calhoun all the credit in the world. I grew up in that era when Calhoun was. That's the reason why I'm not a UConn fan, because I was anti-Calhoun. Right, like Calhoun was the popular team, and little 10-year-old Bryan wants to be contrarian. But he comes over and he makes Connecticut a blue blood. Like, they're talking about Connecticut as a blue blood because
he hasn't won as much as Calhoun won, though.
But
Calhoun,
all blue bloods have multiple coaches. All blue bloods. Connecticut was not a blue blood until Danny Hurley. Connecticut was not considered a blue blood in 2018. I would say Villanova, your boys, were closer to being considered a blue blood at that time than Connecticut was, even though Connecticut had more championships.
But I think that's because we're the prisoner of the moment, and because of the fact that Kevin Ollie had let it slip away. And I give Hurley all the credit in the world for what he did to rebuild it. And I think people saw this coming from a mile away because Hurley's a really good coach, but
he said it too.
Yeah, he said it. Kevin Willard said it when he was at Seton Hall. You put UConn, a state school, into a conference with a bunch of private schools that care about basketball, that fund it, but don't have the levels of funding that any type of state school like UConn are going to have. And you have that level of success and heritage inside your program, you're going to do well. And that's what UConn has done. You put Rick Pitino into St. John's, the world laughed at St. John's when they hired Rick Pitino. They thought it was ridiculous to bring in a guy this old, that he can't do this at this level any longer.
And money fixes everything. Let's be honest. Like, he's got the number one donor. He's got the number one donor in the country.
You don't think UConn's
he just bought the UFL. Like, he's just buying things. Buy things.
Hey,
like,
and that's part of Pitino's genius. He picks his situations, so there's no doubt about it. But you don't think Hurley's buying players?
Right now, if both guys had to go to St. Bonaventure, right, with Adrian
Pitino, was he buying players at Iona?
I would take Hurley.
Was he? You just came into my wheelhouse right there, Bryan. Was Pitino buying players at Iona?
Let's be honest. Who knows? Who knows?
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I look, I work a lot of mid-major basketball. I'm pretty sure that Iona is not a
Kevin Willard won at Iona. Let's don't put Iona as a program like, I'm trying to think of.
I think the bottom had fallen out to such a degree.
Like, you're in New Rochelle, New York. It's not like impossible to win there.
They had 4 wins 2 years before he arrived.
And then Kevin Willard took over a 4-win program and made them a 20-win school too in 2 years. And that was back before transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. I feel that.
Whose model did Kevin Willard use to do it?
Well played. Just because you was insistent on there, but I would just say right now, if I have to take a guy to lead my program, I'm taking Danny Hurley. He's 2 for 2 in the national championships, right? Gets to the Final Four, wins. He's consistent winner. Obviously, he's recruiting Braylon Mullins this year. Like, he's able to get Demery from the transfer portal. He's able to do it all. While Rick's talking about, he's just going to talk about the portal. Doesn't have a point guard, and that might be part of his charm now, right? He's able to say he doesn't give an F. While in theory, that him not giving an F is part of his persona now. While Danny Hurley's persona is kind of a little bit more calculated, and I think Pitino's don't give an F is calculated as well because he's just the old guy that's just going to win and have a ton of money. But I really believe right now I would take Danny Hurley over Rick Pitino. If I was a president of a university, if I had
Okay, hold on.
everything's equal. Go ahead.
Wait, let me pop in for a second. Let's put some parameters around this because I mean, Pitino is not a young individual. If
over the next 3 years, 3 years, 3 years.
3 years. If I said Rick's going to be healthy and going to stay and going to be energetic for 3 years, and Hurley is not going to be burnt out or whatever he was talking about in that book, they're both going to give you their best for the next 3 years. You would take Hurley over Pitino.
I would take Hurley in a heartbeat. And honestly, I think the season that Hurley went through last year is going to be paying for a lot of the teams out there in the country this year because I think he's going to be hyper focused, hyper intense, and bring it up to. I know he was intense in Maui and everything, but I just think he's going to take it to a new level, like 22, 23, 23, 24. And over the next 3 years,
that team. Couldn't you argue that team should have achieved a little bit more though last year? That UConn team.
I argue that St. John's should have beaten Arkansas.
They both
lost in the second round.
I would agree with that.
Did Hurley struggle and how many losses
in the regular season? I mean, St. John's was a much better team. I mean, they were 2 seed versus UConn ending up as an 8 seed.
That's fair. I'll give you that, but I don't think it was. I never felt that St. John's was the superpower that they were going into the tournament as. Honestly, I think they were on the backs of Pitino a little bit more and got a higher seed because of Pitino. I really saw them as a 3-4, and I thought Connecticut was more of a 7-6 last year. So I don't think the gap was huge, but I can't argue with the tournament makers.
I just feel like UConn. I think you're not giving credit for how much UConn had some pratfalls there, middle of the season, second half of the season, where they lost some games they should not have lost. I mean, they lost.
Their best player was hurt.
That's fair. That is fair. I'll give
you. He wasn't benched. He wasn't benched for no reason. I'm just saying that. Like he was legitimately hurt and they struggled.
Oh, by the way, the reason that he was benched in that tournament game against Arkansas was, and I actually give Rick Pitino a little bit of credit for this. I wish that he would have picked a message and stuck with it, but he was benched because he was playing like crap. Let's be honest. Let's call that what it was. And he was worried about him just sending the season down the drain. They needed to try something else. They tried to calm him down. They tried to sit him down, put him back in. Nothing they were doing was working. So they benched him. I get it didn't work. I totally understand that. You're not wrong about the fact that they both left in the second round. If I had told you 3 years ago that UConn was going to lose in the second round of the tournament, you'd be like, oh, okay. If I had told you 3 years ago that St. John's was going to be a 2 seed and lose a close game in the second round of the NCAA tournament, you would have told me to get that out of here. That is not going to happen. You're an absolute idiot.
I'm going to be honest. But UConn beats Florida if they don't get screwed in a couple calls in the second half. Am I right about that?
I don't necessarily think you're wrong, but I also
which ends up being the national championship.
Yeah, because that UConn team would have cruised to the national championship if that happened, right?
Well, I had Maryland beating Florida, so it wasn't that impressive to me. I already discussed that.
All right, I think we have hashed this out. Now it's your turn to decide. Let us know who you think would have won the Ryder Cup. Would it be Team Pitino or Team Hurley? In the comments below, and also you can chime in on which one of us is a fool. Please be nice about it, but we are big boys. We can handle your thoughts, and I get the feeling that I might hear it a little bit more than you, Bryan, about being the fool on this argument, but I'm going to hold my ground. Pitino's resume and what he has done right now speaks for itself. I'll let you have the final word, though, here tonight.
Well, Team Hurley is built on winning, first of all, with national championships or good appearances in the NCAA. And I think when you go 1 through 5, it's Team Hurley without a doubt. I think when you go head to head, Rick Pitino, Danny Hurley, right now, it's Danny Hurley. And Mark, I try to do you justice here.
All right, now you're just pandering to the powers that be. So
That's a slick Rick move. That's a slick Rick move. You should love it right now.
All right. Well, we thank everyone for being with us. We hope that you enjoyed this lengthy version of Big East Energy Weekly. We hope that you enjoy the Ryder Cup this year. And just remember, vote in the comments below who won it, Team Pitino or Team Hurley. Remember, Team Pitino, I took the American strategy here. We're just trying to win with the best. He tried to do the European
He said I would get last
strategy.
word. He said I would get
You're
last
right.
word.
You're right. That'll do it for this edition of Big East Energy Weekly. For Bryan Webster of Pirate Vibes, I'm Matt Janus from Holy Nova. Please like and subscribe to the Big East Energy Network, and we will talk to you soon.